All right, so at this point, we're ready to add the walls of our mug onto the base. There's a couple different ways you can do this. I'm going to show you my preferred method. The first thing I'm going to do is sort of measure by testing this out and rolling this up. So I'm going to place the base right along this bottom part of the walls and carefully supporting the walls while I roll the bottom, because you'll notice that wet clay just kind of wants to collapse. I'm going to keep rolling until it overlaps itself. So now if I carefully, and I've got my hands completely surrounding it so it doesn't collapse, I'm going to sort of straighten up his sides. It's standing nice and tall. And then I'm going to take a straight edge. It's like a ruler. And I'm going to make a line right on the other side of where this inside edge stops. Like so. And then I'm going to carefully unfold this. Move my base back out of the way here. And I can use that same straight edge again. Cut all the way through. So now that I have the rectangle that is exactly the size that the walls need to be, I'm going to take this extra, add it on here. I am ready to score and slip this onto the base. And I'm basically going to use the exact same technique I used to measure it to glue it. So in the clay world, glue is called slip. It is like powdered, bone dry clay that has been reconstituted with water. So your slip should feel like mud. That's when it's perfect. It might be a little bit runnier, maybe a little bit thicker, but it should be somewhat mud-like. And so that's what you have in these cups at your table. Make sure whenever you're not using it or at the end of class, you always put the lids back on because the stuff evaporates really fast. Okay, so what we're going to do is right along the very bottom edge, we're going to take, and you can do this with any tool. You can do it with your wood tools or your paper clip, but we're going to score, which is basically the clay word for make rough. So we're going to roughen up these edges, and I'm not cutting all the way through the clay. I'm just making small little grooves along this bottom edge. I like to make little X's. You can make them however you want. There's no technique that's better than the other, but the whole point of doing this is so that way the slip, the clay glue, can actually fill those grooves as well as filling the grooves of where it is adhering to. So whenever you're scoring and slipping, you have to score both parts that are coming together, and you have to slip both parts that are coming together. So since we want this base to go right along that edge, we also need to score the edge of the base. So I'm just going to roughen up this edge really quick. I'm always holding those slabs really gently. I don't want to pinch them too hard. I don't want to permanently put my fingerprints in them, because if you handle it too roughly, you'll end up having to re-roll things out, which is not the end of the world. Don't cry if that happens to you. That's the cool thing about clay. So there's like an infinite amount of redos. Okay, so I have scored both parts. Now I need to slip both parts. And actually, while I'm at it, let me think. Thinking forward, these two edges are going to be touching. So I'm going to go ahead and also score lightly the very edges of this rectangle. All right, so here I go. I'm going to fill those grooves with the slip. You don't want to use too much. It shouldn't look super puddly. It should just sort of fill those grooves. But that slip, as it dries between both parts, that is what will bond them together, and it makes a really good permanent bond. Okay, and while I'm at it, I might as well go ahead and spread some slip on the edges. There we go. All right, and now I'm going to roll this up the same way I did before. Just going to, you should feel it almost like suction together when you roll them together. Again, be really careful of those walls. I'm kind of gently supporting it with my other hand. If you're struggling at this point, you can always take some dry paper towels and sort of stuff it in here lightly to help give it some support. Get all the way to the end. Pick this up. Carefully bring this together. Join those two seams up. Oh, beautiful. And the last really important thing is to try to smooth out, this is where you want to use your free hand supporting those insides. You want to try to smooth out that seam the best you can. The seam is a great place to attach your handle, so that way you won't notice it as much. You can also take one of these sort of groove tools and go over that seam lightly. You don't want to gouge all the way through it. And then use a smooth tool to kind of comb back up the other way. It'll help fill in that gap. Use your fingers to help smooth anything out that you need to. You'll be really careful not to pinch the walls as you're handling it, because if you pinch it, you are going to stretch the clay out and it will not be this nice, neat cylinder anymore. It'll be all sorts of wonky. So try to resist the urge to pinch the clay. So very gently, we always want to handle those seams in the edges. And these are hand-built mugs, so a little bit of wonk should be good. That's where the love is, in the hand-built thing. That's what makes it look like it wasn't made by a machine. I like those little human touches. That was very Bob Ross of me. Okay, so now I have a pretty solid cylinder. I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some dry paper towels inside. I don't want to stuff it so hard that it's going to bust the edges of my sculpture. In fact, I can already see part of this coming undone. Stop that. No. Okay. All right, so I'm going to leave right now. And then we'll talk about the handle. Okay, now we need to talk about handles. You have 3 different options for your handles. The first option that most of you are probably going to think of is to make a coil. And I know some of you have probably done this before, but a coil is basically how you used to make little worms out of Play-Doh. So what you start with is a little bit of a hot dog shape. And then once you have that hot dog shape kind of started in your hands, then you want to transfer that to the canvas and gently, evenly roll it across all of your fingers. So you can kind of start from the inside and work your way out. You want to make sure that if you're working on one area, that you also balance it out by working in the other area. You don't want to neglect one part of that coil. In general, you want to make sure that the coil is not much thicker than your finger. If it gets much thicker than your finger, then you risk air bubbles being trapped inside of it, and that's bad news when we go to fire this in the kiln. So once you're happy with the thickness of the coil, then you can sort of figure out, I'm going to go ahead and take this off of this. You can kind of see the side view. When you're attaching this onto your mug, that's a giant handle, you need to probably cut it at a little bit of an angle. So think about where it's going to attach to your mug and cut it with a tool so you get a nice flat surface that we can attach with. So that'll go there. And then if I want to make sure it's nice and big so I can actually get my hand in there, I'll probably cut about that much off. So I will just kind of eyeball where that is, move this out of the way, cut it at an angle, so that way I can attach it like so. And those of you following along at home, what do I need to do in order to attach the handle to the mug? Say it out loud if you know it. I'm really hoping you all just said score and slip. Yes, because that's what you should do. So where I'm going to attach this, I would roughen up this part, score, and then also wherever it gets attached. So if I want it there, I'm going to make a little mark so I know where to score and slip. I'm going to score on this side, score down below, and then I would put slip here, slip here, slip here, slip here. And then I'm going to stick it on, and then I will smooth out that transition between the handle and the side of my mug. So it would look like that. But that is not your only option for a handle. That's the coil method. The other method is slab. You can make a long skinny slab for your handle if you wish. If you want to use the guides for this again, you can. But since it's kind of a small piece, it's probably not as necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get a long skinny slab started. Get my rolling pin back out. And roll away. Okay, I want to leave it sort of thick, I don't want it to be a wimpy handle. I'm just going to use a ruler. You can make it as thick or as thin as you want. I think that looks pretty good. And then, since it's going to attach to my mug like this, I'm going to make a cut straight down like this. Let me sort of pretend here. Oh, good observation skills, Mrs. Cantrell. All right, so then I'm just going to even this out. And then again, I would score, and then I would score both places that I attach it to the mug, slip both, and then boom. I would attach that right onto the side like that. And your last option is to free form something kind of like you're playing with Play-Doh. I know some people have talked about creating something that like a handle that looks like something. That's totally fine. So like if I wanted, like a flamingo head or something, I could start by making a coil. In fact, I'm just going to take part of that off. I would start with a coil just like I did before. And then, let's say I wanted its neck to be like this. And then I wanted to attach like a head right here. Cut this off. And then I would just sculpt freehand. The flamingo's head. So I'm just using those old school Play-Doh sculpting methods of just sort of bending the clay into the shape that I want. That is probably much too large of a head. That's okay. And because I want to attach that there, same rules apply. I still need to score and slip and smooth that on there. So I would score, slip and slip, stick these guys together, and then I could score and slip this onto my mug like this. I'm not going to attach that because that's not what I want to have, but those of you who have these really creative ideas about what to make out of the handle, there you go. You have the freedom to do that. Just try to be careful not to create anything that's much thicker than your finger. Like this guy's getting a little too fat. That's probably about as big as I would go. Because like I said, after that, you start risking air bubbles. Okay, so your options for your handle are to just make a coil. You can make a skinny slab, or you can free form something that's a little bit more creative, that has a little bit more flair, if you wish. Okay. So after that, your mug construction is pretty much complete, and you can watch the next video to see how to make it a little bit more personalized. Thanks.